How do we evaluate wine? We call it wine tasting, but in actuality, more than just our sense of taste is employed when we evaluate a wine. We use our senses of sight, smell, taste, and touch to develop a more full understanding of the wine in the glass. The first evaluation of wine should start with our sense of sight. Our eyes can tell us so much about the wine we are going to drink. For most people, the sense of sight is the strongest of the senses. We tend to rely on our sight more than the others. We try to gather as much information as we possibly can through sight and make judgments upon what we can see. While you definitely cannot determine everything you need to know about a wine solely through sight, there are visual cues that can help prepare the other senses for what will follow. So what can actually be seen in a wine? We can see color hue, color intensity, bubbles, legs, and sediment. 3 different types of color receptor cells in the retina of the eye receive stimuli from different parts of the color spectrum. They receive stimuli from the red, blue, and green segments of the spectrum. The brain then combines the stimuli from the 3 different parts and uses that information to discriminate hundreds of different color hues. The different hues in a particular wine can give clues and insights as to what might be expected from the wine. The hues of white wines range from very pale yellow-greens to very deep golden yellows. Very pale yellow with tinges of green can indicate a young wine from a cool growing region, or a wine made from grapes that have not reached full ripeness or maturity. Deep golden hues can indicate age on a wine. They can also indicate younger white wines from a warm growing region, or signify that the wine spent significant time in oak barrels. Red wines can range in hues from inky dark purple to ruby red with orange highlights. Inky purple hues can indicate that a red wine is very young, while brick red tones can clue us into a wine's age. Because anthocyanins, those red color phenolics, react differently with varying pH balances, blue or orange tones can offer insight into a wine's acidity level. Black and blue tinges can indicate a lower acidity level, while ruby or orange highlights can signify that a wine is higher in acid. The intensity of a wine's color can also give us hints as to what can be expected from a wine. Is the color opaque or so clear you can see through it? Does the color extend all the way through, or does it fade as it reaches the edges of the wine? Intense color may indicate a highly extracted wine. That is, one that has spent significant time in contact with the skins during or before the fermentation process. Extended maceration allows more of the color, tannin, and flavor phenolics to leach out of the skins and into the juice. Intense color may also indicate youth in a wine. As a wine ages, the phenolic compounds polymerize. As the phenolic compounds form longer, heavier chains, they begin to settle out of the wine. During this process, the color of the wine begins to fade. Bubbles in a wine are one of the more obvious visible clues a wine can offer. Bubbles in varying size and quantity indicate the presence of carbon dioxide in the wine. Carbon dioxide is one of the natural byproducts of the fermentation process. As we will discuss later in a section on winemaking, in still wines, the carbon dioxide is allowed to escape. However, in sparkling wines, the carbon dioxide is absorbed into the wine by the fermentation process occurring in a pressurized environment. Unintentional bubbles can be a sign that something went wrong. Sometimes a wine that was intended to be still undergoes a secondary fermentation in the bottle, resulting in bubbles. This is a flawed wine. One of the first things novice wine tasters are taught to look for in their wine is legs or tears. As wine slides down the inside of the glass, a super complex science thing happens with evaporation rates and gravity, resulting in the appearance of streams of wine on the bowl of the glass. People try to make many conclusions about the wine based on how the legs appear, but the only thing you can truly tell about a wine from its legs is its relative alcohol content. If you want the overcomplicated scientific how and why of legs, check out the article on the Black Door. But the major takeaway is this: the greater the alcohol, the bigger the droplet, the bigger the legs. The solids that sometimes appear in the bottom of a glass or bottle are known as wine sediment. As a wine ages, sometimes particles clump together and settle out of the wine. This substance can be residual particles left over from the winemaking process or polymerized strands of phenolic compounds. In white wines, tartrate crystals are common examples of sediment. Although sediment is not particularly pleasant to drink, its presence is in no way an indication of a flawed or low-quality wine. Simple decanting and gentle pouring can often keep the sediment out of the glass. Let's move on to the sense of smell. The sense of smell is the most useful of the senses in the wine evaluation process, and is one that generally requires the most development for wine tasters. The human sense of smell is capable of detecting an estimated 10,000 different odors. Of those 10,000 odors, a normal person can be trained to identify approximately 1,000. Wines are estimated to contain around 200 different odorous compounds. These different aromas can give clues as to grape variety, climate, and winemaking techniques used in the growing and making of a particular wine. Smell begins when airborne molecules stimulate olfactory receptor cells. Now there are two key parts to that seemingly simple sentence: airborne molecules and olfactory receptor cells. In order to be detected, odorous compounds must be airborne, that is, evaporated. You can only smell things that are evaporative. Olfactory receptor cells are located in our olfactory epithelium, a 1 square inch patch of cells at the top of the nasal cavity. Air transports volatile compounds through the nostrils and rear nasal passages of the mouth to the olfactory epithelium, which transmits signals to the brain for recognition. And that's how we smell. While evaluating wine, we want to ensure that as many volatile molecules, or esters, reach the olfactory epithelium as possible. Maximizing esters to the olfactory epithelium is a twofold process. We must 1. Increase airflow, and 2. Increase ester evaporation. In normal breathing, only 5 to 10% of air reaches the olfactory epithelium. So when evaluating wine, you gotta get your nose in there and really take a deep breath. Even try breathing with your mouth open. This will allow esters to travel not just through your nostrils, but also through the nasal passages in your mouth. In order to increase ester evaporation, and thus aroma compounds reaching the olfactory epithelium, we must do two things: increase temperature and increase the exposed surface area of the wine. Many of the rituals of wine tasting are designed to do just that. When we swirl the wine, we are increasing the surface area exposed to air. The more surface area exposed to air, the more esters are able to be evaporated, and the more we are able to smell. Then, by holding the wine in the mouth, we are allowing our ambient body temperature to raise the temperature of the wine, thus increasing the rate of ester evaporation, and again, increasing the compounds we are able to smell. And finally, in slurping, we are drawing air through the warmed wine in the mouth, again increasing the surface area of the wine exposed to air. With this action, we get the double benefit of both increasing temperature and increasing air exposure, resulting in maximum ester evaporation and transport to the olfactory epithelium. This is when we get the best smell experience. Now how about taste? Most of what we associate as tastes of wines are actually smells. The sense of taste can only supply information about 6 different sensations: sweetness, sourness, bitterness, saltiness, umami, and fat. Of these, sweet, sour, and bitter are most often found in wine. Sweetness from fruit and/or residual sugar is typically registered first by the brain, followed by sourness from acidity, and then bitterness from tannin. We actually taste to gauge the balance of a wine, not for the flavors of the wine. So we ask ourselves these questions: how do the flavor components relate to each other? Does any one element stick out, or are they all aligned in harmony? And finally, touch. Yes, we even use our sense of touch to evaluate wine. How does the wine feel in our mouth? Does it feel heavy or light, smooth or rough? We can feel the body of a wine with our tongue. In actuality, 1 ounce of one wine weighs exactly the same as 1 ounce of all other wines. But some wines feel weightier or lighter than others in the mouth. This is a perception of a wine's body or viscosity. Wines are most often characterized as either full-bodied, medium-bodied, or light-bodied. Higher alcohol or residual sugar levels can add to the perception of weight, causing a wine to feel heavier or more full-bodied. Conversely, high acidity can cause a wine to feel lighter in body. We can also feel for texture in a wine. Some wines feel smooth and silky across the mouth. Others feel hard or rough. What can these sensations tell us about the wine? In white wines, high acidity is typically responsible for impressions of hardness or firmness. In red wines, it is usually the tannins to blame. If either acid or tannin is particularly low in a wine, the wine can be perceived as soft. Residual sugar and alcohol to a degree can also add to the impression of softness. However, if alcohol levels get too high, a wine can feel hot with an edge of hardness. Tannin can also feel astringent in the mouth. Tannins react with proteins in saliva in the mouth and on the tongue to dry them out. This creates a rough, puckery sensation. We are able to use our senses to observe clues that will help us draw conclusions about the wine in our glass. However, it is absolutely crucial to remember that wine and our perceptions are all very subjective. What smells like strawberries to one might smell like cherries to another. What seems like too much acidity or tannin to you may be just right for me. That's all part of what makes wine fun.